The committee resumes its study today on protecting Canadian residents from extreme weather events.
This afternoon, we are meeting with the following witnesses. From Canadian Real Estate Association, Mrs. Janice Myers, Chief Executive Office. Welcome. From the City of Grand Forks, Mr. Duncan Redfern, Chief Administrative Officer by video conference. Welcome. And from the Town of Princeton, Mr. Spencer Coyne, Mayor by video conference. Welcome. So to all the witnesses, you have opening remarks of 5 minutes. And when I put up this card, it will indicate to you have 1 more minute to finish your thought, your sentence, your paragraph, etc., etc., etc. And once I turn it over, I kindly ask you to stop talking. So we'll start with Mrs. Myers. You have 5 minutes for your opening statements. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Janice Myers, CEO of the Canadian Real Estate Association, representing more than 160,000 realtors from coast to coast to coast, offering a unified voice for homeowners in every riding across this country. For everyday Canadians, climate change isn't a percentage point or a bar graph. It is a devastating, increasingly common extreme weather event with real consequences. I'm appearing here today in my professional capacity, but also as someone who has lived experience. From 2000 to 2014, our family lived in Kelowna, British Columbia. During that time, 2 major wildfires saw us welcome evacuees into our home, as well as 3 occasions experiencing neighborhood evacuation alerts, where we packed up our most precious belongings and stayed on alert, ready to flee. We watched helplessly from across Okanagan Lake as a fire raged down the mountain towards a home that we had recently purchased and were to move into later on that month. We've seen hailstorms in Calgary leave scars visible from space, and hurricanes redraw Atlantic Canada's coastlines, reaching so deeply into Quebec they are fundamentally expanding our national risk map. In the West and across the prairies, wildfires are no longer just seasonal threats. They are market disruptions that delay transactions, spike premiums, and leave home buyers and sellers financially frozen. These impacts reach beyond property lines. Smoke so thick it covers Manitoba to Montreal, creating unsafe farm conditions and pushing local urban air quality to the worst in the world. And nationally, for every dollar covered by private insurance, the taxpayer is on the hook for 3 more in disaster relief and infrastructure repair. As trusted advisors, realtors provide a unique window into the real-time intersection of climate risk and housing affordability, helping illustrate how national trends affect housing budgets. One of our members told us about a buyer in Vancouver Island who almost lost out when an astronomical insurance quote threatened to kill their deal. Along the eastern coast, homeowners are facing 30% increases to maintain simple, basic seismic coverage, and earthquake insurance is often a coastal strata's largest expense. Realtors report a rising number of homeowners in high-risk flood and wildfire zones facing unexpected challenges obtaining affordable coverage, even if their specific property was never affected. We have heard of force majeure clauses are now common, triggering delays of up to 60 days during extreme weather events and causing a domino effect on multiple families with costs they can neither predict nor control. By 2030, it's estimated that 750,000 new homes could be built in high-risk flood and fire zones, pricing this new class of climate-vulnerable Canadians out of their own communities. Mr. Chair, I sit before you this afternoon because this committee recognizes that climate risk is as much about people as it is about property, directly impacting safety, health, and stability for Canadians. As realtors, our members are people experts, offering insights into the impact on Canadians and advice on where federal leadership can help families get ahead. Canada must launch a national flood insurance program, providing a safety net for those in high-risk areas who are being denied coverage. Governments must also consider extending such a program to high-risk wildfire areas, given their increased cost and severity. But reliable safety nets depend on accessible hazard mapping, ensuring that accurate risk assessment and understanding of national exposure. Beyond insurance, we need policies that empower homeowners to protect themselves. Resilience can and should be a shared investment. By offering tax incentives for resilient new builds or consumer rebates for safety upgrades to older homes like metal roofs or backflow valves, the government can help ensure today's homes don't become tomorrow's disaster recovery efforts. At CREA, we believe in opening doors to thriving futures for all, and that begins with a home that is affordable, safe, and durable. Realtors are committed to being part of the solution, which is why CREA has launched an optional certified green designation last year, which equips our members with expertise to help homeowners navigate the practical benefits of climate mitigation and to secure their property. We know that every dollar invested in adaptation today can save up to 15 in future recovery costs, and we understand the risk. Now we need continued federal resolve to invest in building resilience. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Myers. And the floor is yours, Mr. Redfern.
Hello, my name is Duncan Redfern, and I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Grand Forks. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Mayor Baker and Council send their greetings. I would like to use this time to briefly talk about our experience, recommendations to the committee, and to provide some statistical data. In May 2018, the City of Grand Forks, BC, along with rural communities adjacent to both the Kettle and Granby rivers, experienced an unprecedented 1 in 200 year flood event. Due to a higher than normal spring snowpack, a rapid transition from a cool spring to high temperatures, and a large regional rain event, the city suffered catastrophic flooding. This combination of unfavorable conditions was not only a serious risk to life safety, but also compromised city infrastructure, inundated neighborhoods, and caused substantial damage to both commercial and industrial properties. 2019, the city was awarded the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund grant, the amount of roughly $50 million, comprised of $20 million federally, $30 million provincially, and an additional city contribution of approximately $5 million. Shortly after receiving the funding, the city commenced a flood mitigation program that centered around managed retreat, which oversimplified included substantial flood modeling, the acquisition of land and improvements, the construction of flood protection infrastructure, and the return of land to the river or floodplain naturalization. As of 2026, the city has spent $72 million. With this money, we have constructed 3,000 meters of flood protection infrastructure, purchased 90 properties, 70 of which had improvements, including houses, and returned 10 hectares back to the river. Overall, this money has been used to protect our major industrial partners and businesses, critical infrastructure, and at-risk neighborhoods from future events. However, fundamentally, it has restored confidence in our community and provided for economic stability. The viability and future of our community has been directly correlated to this program's success. Moving now to recommendations. Based on our experience, we would like to recommend the following. Most important, that annual funding and support is available for communities experiencing extreme weather events moving forward. Also, as part of this funding, the policy allows for funding to be front-loaded and that the funding is eligible to be used for acquiring property, and that any acquisition of land incorporates an equitable compensation framework such as pre-flood values, additional compensation, consideration of hardship, and the cost for displaced homeowners to re-enter the same market. And where allocated for the acquisition of property can be used for both land and improvements, which was not the case for us. Flexibility in scope is integral, cost centers and grant stacking over the duration of the program. And finally, the funding is available to support the development of community capacity also, which could include project management, financial management, land use and planning, and permitting. Some rough statistics to help provide additional context. Before the flood mitigation program, in a 1 in 200 year event, around 800 people would require evacuation. After the program, that number's been reduced to approximately 250. We've protected $194 million in assessed value, comprised of 175 residential buildings, along with 108 commercial, industrial, and utility structures. Including 2018, Grand Forks has experienced 4 flooding events equal to or greater than a 1 in 10 year flood. In addition, the total program cost increased to 72 million over the 7-year program. In order to finish our program, the province provided an additional 12 million through grant stacking, and the city contributed another 4 million over and above the first 5. As a result of additional compensation and hardship formulas, the city did pay an additional 2.3 million, however, achieved 95% voluntary acquisition. Some perspective, the city of Grand Forks requisitions a little over 4 million annually, and typically we manage a little over 12 million as our annual budget. I could go on, but I'll stop here. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Redfern. And the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Mr. Coyne.
Thank you. White Haskell Squeeze Spencer Coyne. Hello, I'm the Mayor of Princeton, BC. Thank you for having me here today to speak about extreme weather events, something our community and Valley are very intimate with. We have heard, I want to start by saying there's no point in pointing fingers. We've all inherited the situation, and we all have to be part of the situation or the solution. We have heard that we need to stop allowing people to build in floodplains or interface areas. This can't be our answer. It can be part of the solution, but not the answer. There are best practices that can be used to minimize the impact of the increasing frequency of extreme weather events, and local governments are working on them. We are changing building practices, employing fire smart principles. For example, the Princeton Fire Smart team has delivered 634 wildfire home hazard assessments, removed almost 2 million pounds of wildfire fuels in the community, and provided tens of thousands of dollars in rebates and helping community members reduce insurance premiums. We have changed building practices to include a fire smart development permit, and in flood areas, we're requiring builders to construct to get wet while protecting critical systems and residential space, minimizing the impacts on people. The 2021 atmospheric river event that put our community in the international spotlight had the direct economic impact on the local business community, resulting in over $13 million in losses, over $500,000 in lost wages, and an estimated $3.4 million in future losses. This on top of the loss of clean drinking water for the community for 3 years and approximately $13 million in losses to the municipality in the form of infrastructure and operational capacity. Local and regional governments across the country are working collectively to support one another in the face of changing environment. Although we have the support from the province in BC, we still lack national coordination. We need a national program to bring resources and funding to the table. The sheer volume and intensity of extreme weather events are taxing local, regional, provincial, and First Nation systems. In British Columbia, we go from spring freshet to drought to fire and heat to atmospheric river season, like we used to go from winter, spring, summer, and fall. Changing weather systems are affecting forestry, tourism, agriculture, transportation, and every other sector of the Canadian economy. We cannot continue to do this alone. It is bigger than our town, our regional district, and our province. These are national issues and need an all-on-hands-deck solution to minimize the ongoing negative impacts on all of us. I do applaud the changes to the DFAA to build back better, but we still lack a dedicated funding model to help rebuild and bring communities like Princeton and Merritt back on the same playing field as the rest of the nation when competing for funding like DMAF. The federal government can lead by dedicating a dedicated fund outside of DFAA and DMAF to help communities get back on their feet. We need an all hazards guaranteed insurance program in Canada. Yes, only 10% of Canadians may be unable to get flood insurance, but those 10% are now being joined by our neighbors in the Thompson-Nicola region who are now being denied fire insurance because of the high risk of wildfires. Will crop insurance be next? How many more will be joined by the 10% as things get worse? We need to look at to natural solutions where possible. A relocation program that includes insurance companies and keeps neighborhoods together, and that ensures Canadians do not lose their equity in retirement. As I said earlier, we inherited the reality we are in. We can look to the past, though, and we can look to the teachings of our elders and knowledge keepers, as well as Western science and engineering for solutions. I caution that without local government at the table as full partners, and looking only to senior levels of government to try to legislate our way out of the solution will not work. At the local government level, we are doing hard work every day and developing place-based solutions informed by experience that help our communities remain together, heal from the trauma that we've experienced, and move forward. The table needs to be more than just government, though. We need First Nations, industry, business, nonprofits, and others who can provide valuable input as we move forward. We do not need to recreate the good work that's been done across the country. We just need to learn from it and adapt. White, Lim Lim, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coyne. And I'll start with the Conservative Party. The floor is yours, Mrs. Anstey, for 6 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you to the witnesses for being here today. And our representative from Korea, which I'm very familiar with, coming from a real estate background as a real estate broker myself. I'm really glad that you're here because your members certainly are our community people who know the areas where they work and make a living. This has been a priority of the government for quite some time, since 2017, and I'm just curious, how long have they been engaged with you, and in what capacity?
Good question. I've been with the organization for 2 years, so my knowledge in that 2 years is, well, first of all, it's limited because I've only been with the organization for 2 years. I believe this is the first time we've been asked to testify, and we really appreciate the invitation.
Okay, excellent. The other thing I want to ask about is I know you're very involved with your members being brokers and agents, and I'd just like to give you an opportunity just from a grassroots level to tell us what you're hearing from your membership, if you could expand on that a little bit.
Thank you. So we celebrated our 40th anniversary of our political action days, where we go to, we have realtors meet from across the country to meet with members of parliament, mostly talking about the housing affordability crisis. At the end of that committee meeting and the days together, we asked our committee what they were most concerned about and what kept them up at night. What they said was climate risk and the issues that their clients are experiencing right now. And what they're experiencing is having more difficulty finding insurance, that deals are being compromised or held up because there is no insurance, all sorts of anecdotal evidence that keeps them very concerned. So not only are we in an affordability crisis, we are actually also in a climate crisis that is affecting people's ability to have safe, affordable, and secure housing.
Yeah, and just on that point, I think it's also important just to make the note that without insurance, you can't get financing for properties. So it's very closely tied to deals being put together. I'm wondering if, from a data perspective, do you have statistical data about how many deals actually fall apart as a result of insurance not being able to be put in place, or the consumer realizing that the premiums are so high that they're not able to get affordable insurance? Is there any statistical data to back that up?
You're quite right. Most deals are subject to the ability to get financing and find insurance. We do not have national data on that, and I think that's something that we will consider tracking for sure. Anecdotally, it is, as I say, something that's been brought to the attention of the National Association to get more involved in.
I just wanted to shift gears for a second, because one of the other things I think that they're attempting to achieve is a national mapping system, which I understand the spirit of, but I guess the other side of it is all agents have a duty to disclose whatever information they have on property. And, you know, typically what we sort of encourage our agents to do is to approach municipalities to get that information. Now, I represent a part of the country that's quite rural. And so my concern with the national mapping system is accuracy and, you know, this disclosure requirement. You know, you don't want incorrect information being passed on. I just wanted you to speak to that as somebody who's in the industry and very, you know, familiar with both of those concepts.
Sure. Yes. So due diligence is what a realtor absolutely needs to do on behalf of their clients. So they're very aware and do a lot of research to make sure that they understand the environment that their clients are purchasing in. Data mapping, right now, part of the problem is a lack of coordination and lack of cross-country data. And that's exactly why one of the solutions needed is the updated flood and risk mapping. And a smart climate resilience strategy focuses on protecting both existing homeowners while mitigating future risk. Yeah, that's really, I think, where I'll leave it. You're quite right. We don't have enough accurate mapping, and it is changing all the time.
And would you agree, though, like at the municipal level, people who are actually living in these communities, it would be very important that this information would be coming from them? My concern, I guess, is that there's risks of it, you know, once it goes into a national platform, that some of this information might not be completely accurate in some of the smaller areas.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And just quickly, also, we had a Hurricane Fiona, which came through my riding, and a lot of people actually lost their homes completely. And I just wondered if you could speak to this on from a national perspective, that it put immense pressure on that market because you had people displaced, and then they were looking for other properties because their properties they couldn't live in anymore. Is this another pressure, maybe adding another layer of context that you could maybe speak to?
Yes, whenever there is a significant event, climate event, all of those things happen. There's people like ourselves who found ourselves, concerned that we would even be able to buy the property that where the fire was raging towards. There is a time. Thank you.
Finish your sentence. I'll let you finish your sentence.
So basically, every single time there is a major fire or any sort of climate event, all of those things happen. Can't find homes. It affects the entire market. So yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Myers. Mr. Fanjoy for 6 minutes.
Thank you, witnesses. Mayor Coyne, I'd like to start with you. You painted a very challenging picture of what it's like dealing with extreme weather events. I remember the first time I heard the term atmospheric river, and I'm thinking, how can any community prepare itself to deal with water in such volumes? As you look back on the experiences of Princeton, what can you tell us about steps that can be taken moving forward to make the community and other communities more resilient?
Thank you. Well, diking to start with, that's our biggest challenge right now is what do we do with the river? We've manufactured a river that's channelized over the last century. Like I said earlier in my statements, it's none of our fault. We weren't here when it was happened. The channelization has changed the way the river flows. We look at historical photographs and we see where the river used to sit. And, we have to look back to nature-based solutions, I think, is a big part of it. The floodplain mapping, that's a big one. We've just spent $100,000 on floodplain mapping after we just spent $500,000 on floodplain mapping, and we just had another atmospheric river just this past winter, and the numbers that we have are probably not accurate anymore. It really does come down to how do we get the funds to be able to do the things, but keep communities together. I think that's a big part, is keeping communities together as we move forward.
You mentioned that one of the extreme weather events knocked the water supply out for over 3 years. Perhaps you could elaborate on that, because it would seem to me that fresh water is something that we need to come back right away.
Yeah, so we have 3 main wells in our community that feed the entire community. 2 of them were overtaken by the river, and as a result, we had to we run a boil water advisory. We were able to isolate part of the system so that the third well could keep that part of the community in fresh water, which was a blessing because we were able to set up a water filling station. But other than that, we had to rebuild the entire water infrastructure in a different spot, safe from the future flooding. And right now we're undergoing a $6 million project on our last remaining well to make sure it's flood proof as well. So overall, we'll be close to $10 million by the time we're all said and done on that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Myers, what can developers do to build more resilient communities?
What can developers do? Not going to give much advice on developers, except that I do believe that using fire-resistant materials, ensuring that things are built, communities are built with the resistance to withstand, particularly fires. For flooding, I'm not sure what can be done in mitigation for that, but certainly on the fires, there's lots of mitigation techniques, and the type of materials are very, very important when you're building.
Thank you. I'd like you to elaborate on the Canadian Certified Green Certificate Program, what that means in practical terms, how is it being received by both realtors and home buyers?
So it is a certification program for our member realtors. I don't have the numbers at my fingertips as to how many have taken it in the last year. There's a fair amount of interest, and that is why we developed it. And it's really around helping realtors understanding how to help their clients either retrofit their homes for better resilience and understand the impacts of climate change. I don't have the contents of the course in front of me, but it is anybody that's gone through it has highly rated it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Redfern, every disaster brings its lessons. Are there things that knowing what you know now, the community knows now, that you would have done differently, the community would have done differently, and what can be done to anticipate and prepare for the next event?
Thank you. I think in particular planning and understanding those risks within your community, the land use planning in particular, and understanding your flood mapping and that every property is impacted differently. Sometimes it's erosion, sometimes it's surface water, sometimes it's groundwater, infrastructure. I mean, we've learned so many lessons throughout our experience, and having 4 events, 1 in 10 every year, there's a certain amount of post-traumatic stress in some areas of the community as well. So I think that planning aspect of it and just understanding how the water moves and that collaboration with your regional partners and other local governments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Monsieur Bonnet, la parole est à vous pour 6 minutes.
6 minutes, sir. Thank you, Chair. Ms. Myers, I'll give you the time to put your earpiece on. I wanted to know this. To your knowledge, are there programs here or elsewhere that exist that we might call co-insurance programs, where the government would stand for part of the premiums that have to be paid to obtain insurance? I'm very sorry.
Did I not do it right?
Est-ce que ça fonctionne?
Is it operating? Is the interpretation operating?
Quelques mots en français.
Do you want to say a few words in French? We're going to give it another try. Can you hear the interpretation now? Great. Go ahead, Mr. Bonnet. Second time around. I want to know, to your knowledge, if there are programs that exist here or elsewhere in the world that would be co-insurance programs. That is to say, where a government would take over a part of the insurance payments in cases where the insurance would be too high to help people out.
Merci pour vos questions.
Thank you for your question.
I'm not aware of that. I would say it's probably similar to an insurance program that CMHC offers to mortgagees. So I think it's potentially has some very interesting possibilities.
Okay, intéressant. Et est-ce que,
to your knowledge, are there any figures? I think you said no earlier, but in Quebec there is a new flood mapping where for some residences the insurers said they would not provide insurance. Is there something that can be done to provide more insurance for people in the floodplain?
Very good question. I'm not aware of anything that can help other than, if private insurance doesn't step in, I'm not sure that there's any other programs that I'm aware of.
vous avez parlé de...
You spoke about resilient households. There's a program, Building Canada, and that offers funding now. Do you think there should be some criteria to ensure that houses and housing can be made more resilient, more environmentally friendly, better prepared for very cold weather, and so on? That is what resilience is.
Are you speaking of Build Canada homes? Yes, in the non-market housing. Yes, I believe that modular, those kinds of that kind of housing that will not only speed up construction but do it with resilient materials is likely a really great path forward. I don't know if they plan on doing that, but I would expect that should be some of the criteria for sure.
Et peut-être pour...
And for Mr. Redfern, I believe you said that there was a real challenge in obtaining funding with respect to certain events. Can you give us more detail about what you were speaking to, how you obtain funding in your municipality?
So I spoke to eligibility as far as the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, and so the city fortunately has a number of revenue sources over and above taxation, including an electrical utility, which allowed us to build up some strong reserves in anticipation of these projects. $9 million for the city of Grand Forks, which we've invested into this program so far, is 2 years of taxation, so it is fairly substantial and took careful planning. At one point throughout our program, we were informed that improvements would not be eligible, and so the city ended up spending $2.9 million on the purchase of improvements of the 90 properties within the floodplain identified for acquisition.
Just to continue on the same vein with Mr. Coyne, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. You said that there was no guaranteed fund for insurance, but that there should be one. Can you speak to that? What form would that take, to your mind?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think we need, like you were asking earlier about a co-insurance program. We need some sort of national program where we all pay into it, kind of like DFAA, but for specific things like this, but where the homeowner can pay into it and participate. I think that's probably the better answer than just expecting the government to pay for it. I know in the United States you can buy flood insurance. They have a national program. It started because of hurricanes and whatnot. And I think something similar to that might be the answer, because more and more communities, especially out here in BC, are being denied insurance because of natural disasters and extreme weather.
Et de retour pour Madame Meyer.
Ms. Myers again. You mentioned that there were issues with respect to mapping that wasn't up to date. Are there provinces or territories that might be more advanced than others? It seems to me that in Quebec, the mapping was overhauled. It was done over again. I don't really see the federal government being able to say to the provinces that they have to change their mapping. But is there inequality in the mapping, the quality of the mapping in provinces?
I can't say for sure, but I can say that there is not consistent mapping across Canada for sure, and that is, I think, one of the things that needs to be tackled, so that we understand the risk across Canada and we understand how the risk is changing as well.
Mrs. Myers. Mr. Bexty, for 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much, witnesses, for being here today. I really, really appreciate your time and your views on the circumstance. I, like some other members of the committee, I remember the first time I heard the term atmospheric river, and then I recall that it used to be called the Pineapple Express. So it's been here for a very long time. I'm going to take a look at this issue from the point of view of the taxpayer a little bit. And, I don't think it's very efficient for taxpayers to be, let me back up a little bit. Federal disaster recovery programs happen after the fact, after something has already happened. And that is not an optimum circumstance. We could speak to federal insurance programs that would co-pay or participate with home buyers and municipalities to mitigate after the fact again, and that's still not optimum. So I'm wondering about what disaster mitigation or adaptation mechanisms are most effective and what we should look at before the fact. And so could, Mr. Coyne, could you tell me to what extent does urban design aggravate circumstances, or what could we do better from the circumstance we have today, from the situation on the ground today?
I could go on all day about that one. There's a lot we can do. Unfortunately, historically, we built our homes in floodplains. Our communities are based where the water is, and that is a big part of the problem we're facing. Is we build them here, and we also interface zones with fire, especially in rural British Columbia. But there's ways to deal with that. And like I said earlier, if we look at what we've done historically, and we can try to correct that through nature-based solutions, we can look to Western science as well as traditional knowledge. We can mitigate a lot of that, but we can also do that through our zoning, and we can do that through the way we build. I mentioned earlier in my speech that we were talking about building to get wet. We allow you to build above the floodplain, but your garage for your car can be in the floodplain. So you can still have your house there, but all of your electrical and mechanical have to be above the floodplain. So it allows you to continue to live where your house is, because we have no program to buy people out. Grand Forks was one of the few that were able to get secured funding to buy properties. We've had zero luck even having that discussion to this point.
Thank you, Mayor Coyne. That kind of leads me to another question here. Like you stated, we build on floodplains. I live in southern Alberta, and we had the unfortunate catastrophic weather event in 2013 of the floods. And one of the towns most significantly affected was a town called High River. The irony is not lost on me that this town has been called High River for a very long time, and the river indeed did get very high. I'm wondering where responsibility lies for mitigation or for indemnification with municipalities and developers choosing to develop in floodplains or flood-prone areas, where, like, the rest of the country is backstops with disaster recovery programs, but good choices in the first place would result in a better outcome. You spoke to that a little bit, so could you expand on that somewhat?
Yeah, if I could go back to 1860 and tell everybody not to build where we did, I would definitely would. But unfortunately, that's not an option right now. And to move my entire community, and it is almost my entire community, is also not an option right now. We have nowhere to go except for up a mountain. So, yeah, the onus is on all of us. It has to be an all of us solution. I see we're running out of time, but I do think, like, builders, property owners, and government at all levels have to work together to find that solution.
What about, I mean, ongoing zoning is still happening today, maybe not in your community, but in communities across the country. And developers are building on these areas that have been zoned by municipalities and provinces to allow the development. It's almost like negligent.
Yeah. So you have to balance the property owner's equity versus, you know, what we do and how we build that. And I think that's where the struggle comes, especially when it's all left up to the local government who, I mean, to be honest, we go to the grocery store and those people are going to get us. So, you know, it's a real challenge there, and I understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. And the floor is yours, Mr. Grant, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, witnesses, and welcome, Mr. Falk and Monsieur Lavoie. Thank you for being here today. I want to start with Mrs. Myers and just to talk about, in terms of climate adaptation and mitigation, what current steps is government taking to support the real estate sector?
Can you repeat the first part of that question again?
In terms of climate adaptation and mitigation, what current steps is government taking to support the real estate sector?
None come to mind off the top of my head.
Having said that, what could government do?
Well, what we have recommended is a national insurance program that we think would definitely help as a backstop for private insurance. We also think that there should be incentives for people to take action to prepare their properties against particularly fire. There's lots of things that can be done in that regard. So those kinds of programs would certainly help. Putting on a metal roof, those sorts of things are very costly. But if there's rebates or the ability for people to take action, like is recommended, they would if they had the ability to.
Thanks. And how much is long-term resilience becoming more of a factor for homeowners, home buyers, as they choose a house or a home that they want to take care of?
Specific data on that, but I would say that thinking about, from personal experience, thinking about going back to the Okanagan to retire someday, it certainly gives me pause. And thinking about the types of home that I would look to have that would have some of those building materials that could protect it from a fire.
And I just want to talk to Mr. Redfern. I have been to Grand Forks. I drove through there to bring my kids to Christina Lake, which is a beautiful part of our province. So I know how beautiful your community is, and I know how resilient your community is. Watching from afar from my community, I just want to know. I know how resilient you are. So, what are some of the successes that you've seen with your community and your community members to rebuild and become more resilient as you move forward through these many unfortunate circumstances?
Yeah, I think number one is the realization that we couldn't buy all of the properties, or we couldn't remove all of the properties from our community. We have our mill, we have our insulation plant, 350 employees right in the center of some of the areas that flood. So I think the realization that it needs to be a managed retreat approach that balances, some of this planning, acquisition, restoring land back to the rivers, our 10 acres. I think we see individuals in our community also taking it upon themselves, and we flood primarily. We've also had some forest fires, and people are becoming more aware, although we still, through our planning department, have to explain to people what floodplains are and that there are flood construction levels and we need qualified professionals. So it's still challenging.
Thank you. And Mayor Coyne, I know you're a member of the Upper Similkameen Indian Band, and I love the picture behind you. You may know that I'm from the Musqueam First Nation, just on the coast of British Columbia, and I'm also on a floodplain. And I just wanted to ask, say hello to Chief Jacobson if you see her as well, who's a friend of mine. I just wanted to ask, you talked about natural sort of education, Indigenous knowledge. How have you been incorporating that, and what kind of successes are you seeing in that nature?
Well, I'll start with not a lot of success. A lot of our rules are based around not allowing that stuff to actually happen. So, in our diking, in between our dike and our river, we're supposed to have everything cleared out. We're not allowed to plant willows and cottonwoods back that help absorb that water. That's been one of the biggest challenges for me, is trying to incorporate into a Western system those things that we know are there to help with the flood and that. Forest, in the forest fire part, I mean, we're looking at thinning and those sort of things, and bringing back cultural burns, and how do you utilize those things to minimize the buildup on the forest floor. So a little bit more success with the forestry part, but the flooding part has been a real challenge because of the idea that we're not allowed to have stuff between the river and the top of your dike.
How much time do I have left, Mr. Chair?
A couple of seconds, 20 seconds or so.
Very quickly, your town, Mayor Coyne, is very important to a lot of people that go up for recreational use. How has this impacted, wildlife and other things in your territory?
We've seen a huge change in our and the way our ungulates are moving around, especially our elk herds with the forest fires and whatnot, and it's adding extra pressure, especially during hunting season when we have droves of people coming up from the lower mainland, and then you've had massive burns off.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Monsieur Bonnet, for 2.5.
2.5 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. We have the luck of having the mayor with us today. So, to the Mayor of Princeton, in the 2025 budget, there's no money for adapting to climate change per se. That is the federal budget. Is this a big issue for you, this lack of federal money in the budget for that purpose? The fact that you're not getting supplementary support from the federal government?
It is a major problem for myself. That's why I'm part of the Climate Caucus. That's why I'm part of the Elbows Up for Climate group, is because we're trying to push for that climate adaptation funding for municipalities across this country. We're little. My town's 3,000 people. My annual budget is about $4 million in taxation. I can't do this alone. I need support from the federal government. I need support from the provincial government. But we all need to be supporting each other on this. And I cannot stress that enough. You cannot expect small rural communities to deal with these things on our own. And we're the front line of these massive events. And we're also the economic driver of the country. I mean, I have a mine, a mill. We have more jobs than we have homes and people for, and we can't continue to expect us to be able to survive if we don't have some sort of adaptation and mitigation program to help us.
Do you think, then, that the first thing the federal government should do is to inject money to allow the municipalities to manage themselves, to manage their territories themselves? Shouldn't that be the first step?
I think that's a big part of it. Like I said in my opening comment, I don't think this can be legislated. It has to be place-based in a lot of cases. Grand Forks' situation and the way that they're mitigating is not going to be the same for my community. And the sooner we understand that there's there's no silver bullet here, I think the better we'll be. And we have experts, we have people who know what they're doing, and we're working on this every day with or without the help of the federal government or the provincial government. We're doing the work now. We just need support financially and a little bit of coordination from above to make sure that all the resources end up where they need to be.
Mr. Ross, the floor is yours for 5 minutes. Sorry, for 5 minutes, yes.
Okay, thank you, and thank you to the witnesses for joining us here today. And it's an interesting conversation, and I'll talk to the mayor of Princeton in terms of some of the comments that were made, talking about nature-based solutions for flooding, as well as possible infrastructure improvements, say like diking. And I do agree that the solutions should be regional-based and community-based, but that is not how the legislation works, actually. And I've tried in my riding a number of times to actually help residential properties, mitigate and remediate some damage from flooding. But to be clear, when it comes to, especially to properties in my riding, the priority is not residential use. When it comes to diking or flooding, the priority is salmon, for example, and that's going to take a lot of time to change that. Not mentioning Environmental Canada's legislation regulations, not mentioning provincial jurisdictions. So I do agree that this has to be all hands-on to actually talk about this, but it's going to have to be a really strong political coordinated approach to convince government, any government, to say that, yes, we've got to start prioritizing residential use versus, say, what's best for salmon. Has the mayor come across any conversation in that context?
A little bit. I thank you for that question, because we're not on the salmon-bearing river, but we are on part of the Columbia River system. So, I mean, there's complexities down the river when you do talk about and dealing with, especially any river in British Columbia. I mean, they're all, subject to federal and international rules. So, I mean, I think the answer is we all have to sit down at the same table and take off whatever hat we're wearing and just remember that we're all people and we all represent the same people at the end of the day, and forget about what level of government you come from and talk about what's best for people and the land that we're dealing with. And I think that's the big breakdown.
Yeah, and believe me, I tried to have that conversation. I was a part of a leadership race there a few years ago, and I toured Abbotsford flooding, and I actually passed through Princeton. I actually was there during the forest fires as well. I'm glad you brought up the Columbia River, because when I toured Abbotsford, I didn't know it was an international issue. And that, I think that just explains the scope of the issues that we're facing in terms of a disaster, in terms of mitigation, remediation. So, as the mayor from Princeton, have you heard any word saying that there's international obligations in terms of the conversations being had with the United States in terms of flooding? And I know it's not the area, but Columbia River is the opening. Is there a commitment from the government to talk about the international obligations in terms of flooding to areas such as Abbotsford?
Not that I've heard of. Speaking with the mayor of Abbotsford, who I believe is in Ottawa right now, they were very frustrated with the federal government, the fact that they weren't at the time when we met last year meeting with the rest of the international committee on their river system. And I think that just shows the breakdown in the communication and the coordination between all levels of government right now.
The only reason I bring it up is because there may be an opportunity if the CUSMA agreement is actually torn up and we start to talk about a bilateral agreement with the United States. And so there may be an opportunity to talk about flood mitigation. In terms of the nature-based solutions, and I'm just going to throw this out here, I've heard conversations talking about how forestry management plans can help mitigate flood potential in terms of the erosion that comes after a Pineapple Express or whatever the other word is. But I haven't really seen that. And in terms of the jurisdiction, it seems to me more the jurisdiction around forestry management is provincial. But is there any room for the federal government to step in and say, no, we need better forestry management that protects our citizens and residents from disasters?
That's a hard question. I don't know. A lot of that has to do with the relations right now, especially in British Columbia. Okay, sorry, we're out of time.
Monsieur Saint-Pierre, la parole est à vous pour 5 minutes.
5 minutes, Mr. Saint-Pierre. Thank you very much. Chair?
Our government recently introduced the Building Communities Strong Fund. So in the budget 2025, about $51 billion was allocated for regional projects that would adapt to climate change. So I just wanted to mention that that's actually quite important to me because I hear about floods from residents in my riding, specifically, unlike my colleague from British Columbia. I have a more urban riding, and in the specific riding of Anjou, so I have Rivière-des-Prairies in Anjou. Last summer, there was extensive flooding in Anjou, and a lot of homeowners who normally rent out their basements decided that they were no longer insured, or they decided that it was no longer relevant for them to rent out their basement units. So I mention this because it's also tied to the issue of affordability. Residents in my riding are having a hard time finding housing, and I just think that what I'm hearing from residents is that the flooding situation is exacerbating the housing crisis. At least for me, that's what I'm seeing on the ground, and a lot of the blame is going towards local elected officials. So I'm seeing those impacts directly in my riding. So maybe I have a question for you, Mrs. Myers. Can you provide this committee with any reports that demonstrate the increase of housing costs linked to floods or anything around adaptation to climate change?
Thank you for the question. We do not have anything that I'm aware of. But if we do, I'll make sure that we get it to the clerk for you. But I'm not aware off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate you've been at Kenria for 2 years as well. So can you maybe speak to the impact on home prices, generally speaking, in terms of floods or adapting to climate change? What's been the impact, generally speaking, across Canada on?
Well, I would say it's safe to say that, consumer perception of risk is rising as, flooding and wildfires are becoming more common and expanding their reach and intensity. So when homeowners living in those high-risk areas are facing steep devaluation of their properties, not just from the risk reputation and physical damages, but also from the lack of affordable or attainable home insurance. So we see insurers blacklist entire postal codes, refusing to underwrite any new mortgages, and this potentially freezes local markets and stripping Canadians of their home equity. So depending on the situation, yes, it devalues properties and creates risk for longer-term sustainability of a household finance, even as people look to take their asset that they have invested in and finding that it's at the end of the day not going to achieve their financial goals.
That the increased catastrophes that we're witnessing with adapting to climate change, is that generally increasing insurance costs for some of your clients or some of the folks you work with? Can you maybe speak to the rising cost of insurance and how that's affecting some of your clients?
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing that insurance quotes are, getting astronomical. Depending on where you start, a 30% increase is significant. And I guess more concerning is even in the areas where, your property hasn't even specifically been affected. However, it's in a fire zone, and so insurance rates have gone up significantly anyway. So it depends. It depends on what the risk is, but I'll say that it's significant, and it's a cost where you do not want homeowners saying, you know what, maybe I can't afford that, and then they're even at higher risk.
Great, thank you. Mayor Coyne, thanks for joining us today. You mentioned, I believe, that the costs to folks in your community were somewhere around, I believe, $13 million. Can you comment a little bit on who's paying for some of the costs around catastrophic events and some of the floods that you mentioned earlier? Who ends up paying for that?
Yeah, so the initial cost, the 13 million that was in loss to the business community, that came out of their pockets. So that came directly out of our economy. The 13 roughly $1 million in losses to the municipality, those were funded through DFA, insurance, and out of taxation. So again, it's coming off the backs of the taxpayers. Just to your point on the insurance, though, just one example is I have an email from somebody who said their insurance used to be $3,500. This last year, it was $72,000 for their insurance.
So I'd like to thank the witnesses for their presence and testimony. Very enriching. And
point of order. Could we just clarify that last number? Was it 72,000 or 7,200? There's a big difference, and I'd like the record to reflect what it was.
Hundreds. Sorry. 100. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Cohen, can you please Mr. Cohen, can you please repeat the number?
Yeah, it was just 1 sec here. I'll bring it back up. It was 3,500, and then this last year was 7,200.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I would like to thank the witnesses for their testimony today. The witnesses are now excused. Thank you. I shall suspend the meeting for a few minutes while we change witness panels.